It's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. We begin with politics as 10 National Assembly members from Akwa Ibom State, elected on the platform of the People's Democratic Party and the Young People's Party, YPP, have resolved to join Governor Umoeno in the All Progressives Congress. The PDP lawmakers who have pledged allegiance to the APC are Senators Ekong Samson, Akwa Ibom South, and Anieken Basi, Akwa Ibom North East, and House of Representatives member Okwalupo Mete, Paul Asukuo, Alphonsus Uduak, and Ime Basi. Others are Martins Essing, Unyime Edem, and Mark Esset. Emmanuel Ukpongudo, a member of the YPP, is also reported to have chosen to throw his hat in with APC. They joined two senators from Edo and Nasarawa, Neda Imasuen and Ahmed Wadada, respectively, in planned defections to the ruling APC. The development comes on the heels of the defection of Governor Eno to the PDP last Friday. He cited the need to align the oil-rich state with the government at the center. Now, this happened just as the ruling party admitted that it was working to bring 4 other PDP governors into its fold, despite accusations that it was working to turn Nigeria into a one-party state. Now to other issues, as a former First Lady, Maryam Abacha, has faulted former military President General Ibrahim Babangida, retired, over claims in his autobiography blaming her late husband, General Sani Abacha, for the annulment of the June 12, 1993 presidential election. She also dismissed the allegation that the late Abacha looted Nigeria's treasury during his reign as military head of state from 1993 to 1998. The former First Lady, who spoke in an interview to mark 27 years since the death of Abacha, who died in office on June 8, 1998, insisted that the annulment of what is widely regarded as Nigeria's freest and fairest election was not masterminded by her husband. She, however, described the allegation as unfair and politically motivated, especially since the late general is no longer alive to defend himself. It would be recalled that IBB, during the launch of his autobiography, A Journey of Service, on February 20, 2025, claimed that Abacha, who was then the Chief of Defense Staff, annulled the June 12 election without his, that's Babangida's, approval. Now to security issues, as a retired Army Major Joe Ajayi, who was kidnapped at his residence in Odoape, Kababunu local government area of Kogi State a few weeks ago, has died in the kidnapper's den despite payment of 10 million naira ransom for his release. It was gathered that the initial demands of 50 million naira ransom by his abductors lingered for long. When the family could not pay, this resulted in his health deteriorating as he had no means of getting his medication. The kidnappers informed the family that their plea for his medication to be forwarded to him would come at an extra cost, which the family could not meet. However, as soon as the abductors discovered that Ajayi could not survive his ordeal, they reduced the ransom to 10 million naira. A source in the community said that the Ajayi family, believing he was still alive, quickly agreed to pay the 10 million naira for his rescue. I quote, "Once the ransom was paid, the kidnappers directed the family to where they would find him, only for them to meet his, that's Ajayi's, lifeless body," end of quote. The retired army officer's remains have been deposited at the morgue of the Kaba Specialist Hospital. May his soul rest in peace, and we do commiserate with his family, friends, and loved ones on such a tragic and traumatizing, needless loss of life.
Absolutely. Thank you, Vimbai. We definitely echo our condolences. I think the circumstances of the General's death it's regrettable, unfortunately, and I think that this also sparks a lot of protests about how best to deal with situations like kidnapping and banditry. On the one hand, you can understand and sympathize with families who find themselves in this position if they're given information not to negotiate with terrorists, not to pay ransoms, and to rely on security services. It puts them in a bind because they feel as though if they comply and are able to rustle up some money, then surely their loved one would be returned. And that is the situation in this case. They were able to come up with a fraction of what the demanded ransom was. And unfortunately, they were only met with the corpse of their loved one once they did so. So I think that this underscores the ever-growing issue with insecurity in this country. And we talk about insecurity in different regions across Nigeria often. And I think because we speak about it so often, it might not hit home as hard as it should. But seeing these scenes of people wailing, people in tears, because they are also victims of the insecurity that we're seeing in this country, it is heartbreaking and devastating. So yes, I re-echo our condolences to their families. Moving on, I'll comment very quickly on the comments by Maryam Abacha. I think that there are many people who would agree to some extent of what she said, especially when she says that, perhaps she's not as comfortable hearing accusations of annulment and of murder, of looting against her husband because he is not here to defend himself. But I think there are many people in this country, many people who had to leave this country, who would say that their loved ones are also not here anymore to defend themselves because of what happened under General Sani Abacha's reign, if you can call it that. So I think that, again, when we come to this time of year, while we can celebrate the progress of democracy in this country, it always reignites a lot of feelings of disappointment, of a lot of trauma that many people have gone through. And to this day, I still think that when people are talking about Nigeria's independence story, though it is one of triumph, there's definitely a lot of disappointment, of sadness, of death, and that doesn't exclude the Abacha family. But I do think at this point there needs to be a stronger conversation about this looted amount, how much has been taken, where it went, how it can be accounted for. She says that her husband did not loot any money. Many people in this country feel as though he did. And I do think that there are many people in this country, all of us, who deserve to find out what actually happened to that looted amount.
Absolutely.
Okay, where do I start from? Let me start with Mrs. Maryam Abacha, the widow of the late General Sani Abacha. We discussed this same subject yesterday. And I said categorically that I recall that the columns that I wrote on that particular subject, 28 years ago, 27 years ago, I was saying that there was dancing in the streets. People were literally dancing that Abacha died, because he had imposed on the country despotism of the limits of human imagination, dictatorship of the most heinous type. In fact, Abacha was so murderous that even children, babies, that Polonu Yomi's baby, if the mother had not quickly run away, they were going to arrest a 1-week-old baby. That child would be an adult now. He could have been arrested. Anything could have happened to him at that time. Families left this country because of Abacha's despotism. Nobody was safe, not even journalists. People disappeared. There was a notorious department called DMI that tortured people. So let's not argue about dictatorship. And it was on the basis of the full extent of the authoritarianism, the dictatorship, the brutality imposed on Nigerians by the Abacha administration that Nigerians, in fact, became resolved that never again should there be military rule again in this country. So when Nigerians condemn military rule, soldiers say, oh, under military rule, a few things, developmental projects, 4th development plan, 3rd development plan, at least move Nigeria forward. But people say, well, we saw the very limits of military dictatorship under Abacha. So I think we should be careful with revisionism. To say, oh, Abacha did very well. Okay, maybe he created 1 or 2 states where the people are forever grateful to him. That's that about that. Number 2, Mrs. Abacha was trying to also rewrite what General Babangida wrote, saying that, some military officers, were the ones who forced his hand for the annulment of June 12. June 12, by the way, is around the corner. And I guess that's why all this discussion is coming around. The annulment of June 12, 1993 general elections, considered the freest and the fairest in Nigerian history. Now, Abacha had a hand in that. And he was also a major beneficiary. The interim national government that was left behind by General Babangida, when he said he was stepping aside, euphemistically, that is, was wrong-footed. within 91 days by General Abacha, who now took over and unleashed greater terror on the country. 3, Mrs. Abacha is saying, oh, her husband saved money for the country. Okay. Where was the money saved? Nigeria has an institutional framework for saving money, the Central Bank of Nigeria. So did he save the money in his house? Or did he save the money in some safe havens across the world? That is why Abacha has acquired the reputation as the ancestor that keeps giving. Money is kept in Switzerland. Money is kept in other places, island of Jersey, in the United States and elsewhere, that the Nigerian government has been tracing, and those funds have been repatriated again and again. That was how he got the name, the ancestor that keeps giving. Now, what the Nigerian government has even been able to get is just interest on the stolen loot. We've not even been able to get to the principal. And yet the widow comes across and says, oh, the money, her husband saved the money on behalf of Nigeria. What of money that was also retrieved from the children? What is the business of the children with Nigeria's, funds? Have they also come forward to say this is the money that our father asked us to save for Nigeria? Well, there will have been issues about their bona fide in that regard. I think the big issue, which I guess we'll get to later in the week, is about the evil of the annulment of the June 12 election. Today is June 10. In 2 days' time, it will be the anniversary of June 12. When the mandate of the Nigerian people was destroyed, when the people of Nigeria were suppressed, and that affected the democratic trajectory of Nigeria. There are persons in government today who benefited from the evil of Abacha, including persons who are Abacha's agents and who are dancing on the grave of the many persons who died as a result of the mayhem that Abacha unleashed on this country. I speak as a witness to history, not somebody who went and Googled the story. I was there and I wrote about it. Now, second, that takes me immediately to the issue about the people who are defecting. There are actually not 10, maybe 10 from Akwa Ibom, coming from the PDP and also the Young People's Party. 2 others are coming from Nasarawa. Pressure is being put on some other people to also join. Okay, these defections, the president has said, look, those parties from where they're defecting, they don't have life jackets. Those people are living sinking boats. So the president is right, having said that more and more people will join the ruling All Progressives Congress. We have made the point ad nauseam that there is no ideology that Nigerian politicians will follow where they think their interests will be best served. And don't be surprised if more lawmakers defect. After all, in Delta State, everybody defected. The entire PDP machinery. In Akwa Ibom State, where we're told 10 persons are coming from now, not everybody defected with the governor. At least 3 commissioners resigned. Udom Emmanuel, who was the governor before Pastor Eno, did not join the defection train. But you will find more people defecting. The thing to ask is, where is the interest of the ordinary Nigerian who is going to vote? Many of these people who are defecting, they will not be in Nigeria on election day. Some of them, they leave Nigeria a few days to election, and they will be monitoring from London, from Spain, from US. How is it going? How is it going? They are only into politics for the benefits that they will gain. The thing to say is, what are we doing about voter education? What are we doing about mobilizing the people? The women, the first-time voters who will turn out en masse on election day. Those are the ones that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu needs. Those are the ones that he needs to cultivate. Those are the ones he needs to make democracy meaningful for. So that when they come out on election day, they will say, now our papa be this, so, and we want him. Not all these, elementary, stomach-centered, stomach-driven, belly-faced front politicians who are just looking for their own personal interests. As we say, many of them will be swept off by Hurricane Tinubu, but it's the people that matter. Finally, Major Ajayi retired, who was killed by kidnappers. Well, Nigeria, as we always say on this program, happened to him. And it is most unfortunate, it is tragic, because nobody deserves to die. The right to life is a sacrosanct right. The right to the dignity of the human person is a constitutional right. There should be no reason whatsoever why any Nigerian, whether a retired army major or a child or an ordinary person, should be kidnapped and killed by bandits. It speaks to failure on the part of government to fulfill its obligations under the Constitution, Section 15, Section 14, Sub 2 of the 1999 Constitution, which is to ensure the security and welfare of every one of us living within this territory called Nigeria. Where anybody dies, except through judicial means, having committed a crime, that in itself is abominable. Or what is that phrase that Elon Musk used? That in itself is a disgusting abomination and should not be encouraged. And it's just another reminder, the plight of retired Army Major Ajayi to President Tinubu and the administration, that the task of making this environment secure is an unfinished task, and it's a task to which the administration should rededicate itself.
Absolutely, and it's a task of urgent priority. However, I'll begin with the case of Mrs. Maryam Abacha. My father always shared a very interesting saying. He always say, one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist. And this is the clear case, is that there is a historical context, there is evidence, are numerous accounts, witness accounts, those who are close to the story, those who were parts and parcel of all that transpired during that time, endless in their number. However, you can never tell somebody that their loved one is the villain of a story. And so we don't expect much else from her and from the Abacha family, who, since the release of IBB's book, have stood firm and tried to save the name and the legacy of their own patriarch. And it's understandable. Of course they would. They have an emotional and subjective interest in the story. It's not just a story. It's part of their family legacy and their family history. However, it is important for us not to allow ourselves to get sucked into this season of historical, it's two things. It's historical revisionism and historical denialism. Now, what's the difference? When we say revisionism, it means we're coming together and we are agreeing that history got it wrong and this is the revised way we will accept it was done. When we say denialism, we're actually saying that we are taking away, we are denying the fact that this is what happened, and we're creating a new truth that we feel the world should follow or the world should begin to live by. And we need to be very careful in this instance because some dangerous precedents will be set. Now, when you look at the issue of the loot, when it comes to asset recovery, especially of somebody who is posthumous, it is a little bit challenging. And that's because international organizations use what they call the balance of probabilities, as opposed to criminal conviction beyond reasonable doubt. Of course, because the person is not alive to defend themselves. However, based on the balance of probabilities, all of the forensic accounting that has happened, all of the investigations by several international organizations with assistance from the Nigerian government have pointed to several issues, many of which point to anonymous offshore vehicles. Now, why are state funds being kept in anonymous offshore vehicles? If you're saying it's for the sake of saving or there was a concern around the time, then there's still a constitutional issue around putting money into anonymous vehicles where your successors will be unable to trace what happened to the national coffer. These are national funds, they're not personal funds. And then, of course, we also remember that, as Dr. Abacha alluded to, the family has also been complicit, and they've also complied and have been part of being able to return some of these funds. In 2002, $1 billion was returned from Switzerland. This was in cooperation with the family. So I think, yes, it's an emotional issue for the family, undoubtedly so. But it's important for us to also remember to stick to the historical facts as they have developed and they have been laid out. I just have a few seconds left. I'll just touch on the defection of the senators and the House of Reps members. And for me, I just call on the Constitution. I ask, what is the enforceability of the Constitution, and why are these people not losing their seats? It's a very strange phenomenon. We can't ignore the fact that the Constitution says that one of the reasons for vacating your seat is defection, unless there is internal party crisis, party division, or there's a party merger. So I do hope that this can be taken up by the opposition parties more actively, because we've seen a very docile attitude towards these defections. They come and they cry foul in the media, but nothing is being done within the confines of the law. Well, on a final note, the APC is headed to a 2/3 majority in the Senate, just 5 seats to go until that 2/3 is achieved. And of course, we know 2/3 majority is the gateway to constitutional power.